The car moved through the narrow lanes of the old neighborhood. Sundar looked out the window and slowly recognized the corners of his past. The same potholes, the same fruit stall, even the same crooked electric pole with the wires hanging dangerously low. Everything looked smaller now, but the emotions felt bigger. Lakshmi sat silently beside him, her hands resting gently in her lap. Her eyes didn't move much, but her heart did. Every crack in the wall, every stain on the old street, told a story. Finally, the car stopped. In front of them stood a tiny, broken structure, half a wall, half a memory. Where once there had been a tea stall, now there was only an open space, a stone bench, and a single wooden board leaning against the wall with faded paint. Lakshmi stepped out first. She walked straight to the stone bench and sat down. She didn't say anything. Sundar followed, sitting beside her. He looked around. This is where Appa served tea. Every morning, she replied. Rain or sun, I don't remember much of it. You were too young, but this bench saw everything. Sundar ran his hand along the edge of the bench. Rough, chipped, but solid. He used to let me sit here when customers weren't around, he recalled. He'd give me half a cup. Lakshmi nodded. You thought it was a big deal. It was, Sundar said. Back then, even tea was luxury. They sat quietly. A small breeze passed. An old man walked by, stopped, and stared. You're Pichai's son? He asked gently. Yes, Sundar replied. The man smiled, eyes full of memory. Your father once gave me tea for free for a whole week. I had lost my job. He said, Don't worry, Anna. Today it's tea. Tomorrow, you'll pay me back with prayers. Lakshmi smiled, tears forming. He never told me that. He never told anyone, the man said. But he helped many. The man left with a respectful nod. Sundar looked at his mother. Was Appa always like that? Always, she whispered. Quiet, kind, strong, and tired, Sundar added. Lakshmi looked at him. I remember he was always tired, he said. But he never stopped. He was tired, she admitted, but not of work. He was tired of being unseen. Those words hung heavy in the air. Sundar stood up, walked to the back of the bench. Something caught his eye, a small metal box half buried under broken tiles. He knelt down and carefully pulled it out. It was rusty, old, but still sealed. Oma, he called. Do you know what this is? Her eyes widened. I thought that was lost. What is it? Your father's letters, she said. He used to write when the shop was empty. Thoughts, prayers, poems, sometimes letters to you. Sundar carefully opened the box. Inside were folded papers, worn with time. He took out one and read, softly, Dear Kanna, by the time you read this, maybe I'll be gone, or maybe you'll be too far to hear my voice. So I'm writing instead. If you ever feel alone at the top, remember real success is not in how far you rise, but in how gently you lift others. Dan single quotes, chase big things, chase true things, and if the world ever forgets who you are, come back here, to this bench, and remember who sat beside you when no one else did, with love. Appa, Sundar's voice cracked. He folded the letter carefully and held it to his heart. He never gave me this. He was waiting for the right time, Lakshmi said. But time moved faster than he expected. Sundar sat back down. I wish I could talk to him now. Just once. You can, Lakshmi said. Close your eyes. He did. The sounds of the city faded, and in that moment, in his heart, he saw his father, wearing a white shirt, wiping the sweat from his forehead, handing a steel cup of tea to a stranger with a smile. He whispered, a peepee, I made it, and in his heart, he heard the reply, soft and warm, I know. When he opened his eyes, the street felt different, not newer, but more alive. He turned to his mother. Let's do something. What? Let's rebuild this bench. But not as a tea stall. Then as what? As a place for stories? He said. A place where people come, sit, and share what they've learned. Lakshmi stared at him. That's what your father always wanted. Not a shop, a shelter. Then we'll call it that. Sundar smiled. Appa's shelter. They stood up. Sundar looked around once more. And we'll keep the bench, he added. Just the way it is. As they got back into the car, Sundar held the box of letters tightly. He didn't just find paper inside. He found direction, and somewhere, deep inside, something told him this journey wasn't over. Not yet. 10 years passed, and the stone bench still stood. The same wood, the same tree, the same spirit. But everything else had changed. What began as a quiet corner in Tiruchirapalli had become a movement. Appa's shelter wasn't just one place now. It had spread across small towns, villages, railway stations, even corporate offices. Not as franchises, not as businesses, but as open spaces where people could sit, share, and feel heard. And at the center of it all remained one image, an old green saree, and folded hands. In Delhi, the capital buzzed with a new kind of energy. A grand event was being held in the National Auditorium. Invitations had gone out weeks in advance, but not to celebrities, not to CEOs. The guest list was different: tea sellers, school teachers, single mothers, street children turned students, and quiet heroes. And one name was on everyone's lips again: Sundar Pichai, not as a tech leader, but as the son of Lakshmi Pichai, and as the founder of the bench that listens. The crowd filled slowly. On the main screen, a young boy appeared, barefoot, dusty, holding a plastic bag full of bottles. The same boy from 10 years ago. Sanjay, now grown, he walked onto the stage in a simple kurta, his voice calm, clear, and full of purpose. 10 years ago, he said, I had no shoes. I had no school. I had no idea who Sundar Pichai was. I just knew that someone gave me tea without asking me to earn it. The hall was silent, and today, I'm the first student from my slum to become a school principal. Applause, real, raw, tearful, double quotes. But more than that, Sanjay continued. I now run one of the largest APA shelter chapters in the South. We don't teach coding. We teach kindness. We teach listening. We teach how to sit next to someone without needing to fix them. From the front row, Lakshmi watched with wet eyes. And beside her, Sundar sat still, silent, overwhelmed. The host walked to the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the two people who made this possible, not with power, but with presence. Sundar Pichai and Lakshmi Pichai. As they walked up, the crowd stood. Not for fame, not for success, but for something far deeper. For roots, for humility, for love. Lakshmi stepped up first. She wore the same green sari, this time, polished, clean, and draped with care by a young girl who had learned tailoring from Appa's shelter. She looked out at the sea of faces, and slowly, once again, folded her hands, the same way she had, all those years ago, in front of the Prime Minister. And again, Sundar looked down again, his eyes filled. Again. A tear fell, but this time he didn't turn away. He let it fall. Openly. He walked to the microphone. When I was a boy, he said, my father sold tea on a stone bench. My mother taught without a title. And I sat between them, wondering if the world would ever know who they were. He paused. Double quotes today. The world does. A young girl stood up in the back. Sir, she called out, why did your mother always fold her hands? The crowd turned. Lakshmi smiled. Then she walked to the edge of the stage and said softly, because folded hands carry more power than raised ones. The crowd clapped, but Sundar wasn't done. If you ask me what changed my life, he said, it wasn't Silicon Valley. It wasn't Google. It was watching my mother hand a cup of tea to a hungry boy, and asking nothing in return. That's what Appa's shelter stands for. Not help, not charity, just love, with no receipt. He turned to Lakshmi. I told you once you didn't need to fold your hands. But now, I know those hands held this country up when no one noticed. The audience rose. No one asked them to. They just stood, hands folded, as if to return the gesture. And in that hall, something powerful happened. Not noise, pretending to be strength, but silence. Born from understanding, Lakshmi reached for the microphone one last time. Don't build your life to be famous, she said. Build it so someone you'll never meet can sit on a bench one day and feel seen. Then she turned to leave, but before she stepped down, she looked back and said the quietest words of the night. Thank you for listening. Outside, the sun set, but somewhere far in the country, a young boy sat on a bench made of wood, sipping chai, telling his story to a stranger. No camera watched him, no microphone caught his voice. But if you listened closely, if you really listened, you would hear something in his tone. Hope, the kind that doesn't shout, the kind that folds its hands quietly, and stays. A week later, the air in Delhi buzzed again, not with traffic, not with noise, but with whispers. People were talking about Sundar Pichai. Not about his tech achievements, not about his speeches, but about something different. About a stone bench. About chai. About barefoot boys wearing big shoes. About a shelter in Tiruchirapalli that did not sell anything, but gave everything. And now, something else was about to happen. A second invitation came. This time, it wasn't for a global conference or a business award. It was personal. Prime Minister Narendra Modi had called Sundar and Lakshmi back to Delhi. Not for a press event, not for a meeting, but for a conversation. They arrived at the official residence just after sunrise. It was quiet, the kind of quiet that means something important is about to happen. A staff member greeted them warmly and led them through a garden blooming with roses. Sundar held his mother's arm as they walked. She wore the same green sari. No makeup, no jewelry, just the same calm strength in her eyes. When they entered the room, Prime Minister Modi was already standing. He smiled. Lakshmi ji, Sundar ji, welcome back. Lakshmi folded her hands. Namaste. Sundar did the same. Please sit, Modi said. They sat. There was no camera, no script, just three people, and a shared silence. I've been hearing stories, Modi said finally, about a bench, about chai, about a shelter that doesn't ask questions before giving warmth. Sundar nodded softly. We didn't plan it, sir. It just, happened. Modi smiled. The best things usually do. He turned to Lakshmi. You've started something powerful. Lakshmi looked surprised. Me? Yes? Said firmly. You greeted me with folded hands when you didn't need to. And that moment spoke louder than any award we could have given. Sundar looked at his mother. Her eyes were already moist. Modi continued. In a time where we teach children to chase titles, you taught us to chase values. Lakshmi looked down. We want to honor you, Modi said. But not with a trophy, with something lasting. He reached under the table and pulled out a small wooden box. Inside was a golden nameplate. Lakshmi Pichai, Foundation of Humility and Hope. Sundar gasped. What is this? Lakshmi asked softly. A center we are building, Modi explained. To teach values, soft skills, kindness, and emotional strength to students and teachers across India. It will be in your name, and its motto will be your words. Walk like a lion, not like a beggar. Lakshmi's lips trembled. But I am just a mother, she whispered. Exactly, Modi said. And that is the highest title anyone can have. Tears fell from her eyes. Sundar held her hand, gently. Thank you, he said. Modi leaned forward. And there's one more thing. I want to visit your shelter. Quietly. No media. Just me, a cup of tea, and your bench. Lakshmi smiled. We'll keep the bench warm. A month later, Prime Minister Modi sat on the stone bench no cameras, no security, just a steel cup in his hand and Sundar beside him. Children played nearby. An old man read a newspaper. A young girl told her story about learning to read. Modi listened quietly. Then he said, "This is what power should feel like." Sundar nodded, humble. They sat in silence. Lakshmi arrived shortly after, holding a fresh kettle of chai. She served the Prime Minister with the same hands that once carried firewood, washed clothes, and wiped her son's tears. Modi stood and bowed gently. "Thank you, Lakshmi ji," he said. She folded her hands again. "I only poured tea. The real heat came from life." They all laughed. Nearby, a young boy asked another, "Who is that man drinking tea?" "I think he runs the country," the other whispered. "Then why is he sitting here?" The boy smiled. "Because this place runs something bigger." "What?" "Hearts." Later that evening, as the sun set over the rooftops, Sundar and Lakshmi sat alone on the bench. No cameras, no visitors, just them. "Oma," he said, "how did we get here?" She smiled. "By never forgetting where we started." He looked at her. "I was wrong, you know," he added. "About what?" "When I said you didn't need to fold your hands. Now I understand. You folded them not because you were small, but because you were strong." She touched his cheek gently. "And you cried not because you were weak, but because you remembered." They sat quietly. Then Lakshmi said, "I have one dream left. Tell me that one day someone will sit here, drink chai, and say, 'I became who I am because of this bench.'" Sundar smiled. "It's already happening." As the stars came out one by one, a breeze passed over the shelter. And in that soft wind, between two hearts that had walked through fire, silence, and sacrifice, the past and future met, not in a boardroom, not in a speech, but on a stone bench, where love had always waited. The car moved slowly through narrow village roads. Trees lined both sides. Buffaloes walked lazily near the fields. The air was different, here quiet, warm, and filled with memories. Lakshmi sat quietly, holding a small cloth bag in her lap. Sundar sat beside her, not as the CEO of a global tech giant, but as a son taking his mother back to the place where her story began. "We're almost there," Sundar said softly. Lakshmi didn't answer. Her fingers were already trembling. They turned a corner and stopped in front of an old iron gate. The paint was faded, the letters almost gone, but still visible. Government Girls, Primary School. Tiruchirapalli. Lakshmi stared. Her school. Her past. And now, after all these years, her son had brought her here. Sundar stepped out first, then opened the door for her. She stepped onto the dry earth with slow, careful feet. Her eyes scanned the walls, the cracks, the broken tiles, but also the banyan tree in the corner, still standing tall, still spreading its shade. "I used to sit under that tree when I forgot my homework," she whispered. Sundar smiled. "How often did you forget?" "More than I admit." They walked in together. The headmaster, a young woman in her 30s, came rushing out. "Madam Lakshmi?" she asked gently. Lakshmi nodded. "Sir Sundar." Her voice shook slightly. "We're honored, truly honored." "We just came to see," Sundar said simply. "Then please," the headmaster said, opening her arms. "This way." They walked slowly through the corridor. The paint peeled in places. Windows hung loose, but everything still breathed. Laughter from a nearby class floated through the air. Lakshmi stopped at one door. "This was my classroom," she said. "Third bench, near the window." The headmaster nodded. "Still used every day." Lakshmi stepped inside. The children inside froze for a second, unsure. The teacher, an older man with a kind smile, welcomed them with a nod. "Students," he said, "this is Lakshmi Pichai. She once studied here, and this," he pointed, "is Her son. A little girl raised her hand. What does her son do? The teacher smiled. He's the reason your phone works. The class giggled. Lakshmi looked at the bench where she once sat. Her fingers reached out and touched the edge of the wood. It was scratched, rough, and still firm. I carved my name here once, she whispered. I wonder if it's still ... She stopped, her eyes widened. They're faint, but real. Were the letters LAKSHM. I scratched into the wood. She gasped. Sundar knelt beside her. Is that really your handwriting? She nodded slowly, tears forming. I used to sit here and dream of wearing a new school uniform. I had only one. Sometimes I washed it and dried it by the fire and wore it half wet. The children listened, silently, and I dreamed of being a teacher, she said. But I never made it. Sundar looked at the teacher. Can we use the board for a moment? Of course. Lakshmi hesitated, then walked slowly to the blackboard. She picked up a piece of chalk, her fingers shaky, but sure. She wrote one word, hope. The children clapped. Sundar whispered to her, Today, you taught your first class. She turned to the children. Do you know what this word means? One boy raised his hand. It means, not giving up. She smiled. Close. It means, believing in a tomorrow that hasn't come yet. Even when today is hard. Just then, the headmaster came back in. There's something you should see, she said. They followed her to a small storage room behind the building. It was dusty, filled with old books and chairs. Last year, we cleaned this place, the headmaster said, and we found something. We kept it safe. She walked to the corner and pulled a cloth from the wall. Behind it was an old wooden board, a timetable. Chalk-written. Under Monday, it said, English Lakshmi. You taught here? Sundar asked, stunned. Laksh. I nodded slowly. Only for a week. As a substitute. I was 16. I used to come before sunrise, clean the room, and teach the little ones. She touched the board gently. No one paid me. But it was the happiest week of my life. Sundar said quietly, You were already a teacher. You just didn't have the title. She smiled. We don't need titles to change lives. They walked back to the car as the sun began to lower in the sky. On the way out, some children gave Lakshmi handmade cards. One had drawn a woman in a green sari holding a stick of chalk. As the car moved again, Sundar held the card and stared at it. Double quotes AMMA. He said suddenly, Why didn't you ever tell me you taught? She looked out the window. Because it wasn't important then, but it is now. She nodded. Maybe, but your success is not built on my forgotten stories. It's built on your effort. No, he said firmly. It's built on your silence. She turned to him. I never would have found my path if you hadn't let me walk it, even when it scared you. The car fell silent again. Then she said, There's one more place I want to visit. Where your father's tea stall. Sundar blinked. It's still there. No, but the bench is... He smiled. Then let's go, he said, as the car turned down a different road. Sundar looked at his mother again. She wasn't just a mother. She was a quiet storm, and for the first time, he realized, ... She didn't raise a CEO, she raised a human being. The air inside the hall was quiet, but it was not empty. It was filled with respect, tension, and something else, something deeper. Cameras clicked softly as people took their seats. Leaders, journalists, students, and workers from all parts of India sat shoulder to shoulder. They were here for an event that celebrated global Indian leaders who made the nation proud. And sitting at the center of it all was Sundar Pichai, CEO of Google, a man whose name was known in every home with a phone or a computer. He looked calm, polished, and confident. He wore a simple suit, as always, and gave a small smile when his name was called. People clapped loudly. Some stood. Sundar bowed his head gently in thanks. But even as the applause rang out, Sundar's eyes kept searching the crowd. He was not looking for praise. He was looking for someone else. Lakshmi Pichai, his mother, stood quietly at the side of the stage, dressed in a soft green sari with a golden border. Her hands held each other tightly, and her eyes did not shine with pride. Alone they held memories, hard ones made from firewood kitchens, broken sandals, and quiet tears when school fees were too high. When the announcer said, "We now welcome the Prime Minister of India, Narendra Modi," the hall rose in unison. Sundar stood too, hands at his side, heart suddenly louder than it was moments ago. Modi walked in calmly, waving gently to the crowd. He paused when he reached Sundar, shook his hand warmly, and smiled. Sundar smiled back. But when Modi turned and saw Lakshmi standing a few steps behind, something changed. Lakshmi did not move quickly. She stepped forward with grace, stopped in front of the Prime Minister, and slowly brought her hands together in a traditional namaste. There was no sound in the room, just that gesture. A soft smile formed on Modi's face. But Sundar, he looked away. His throat tightened. He felt something rise in his chest he could not push down. Lakshmi's folded hands were not just a greeting. They carried stories. They carried sleepless nights when the rainwater came through the tin roof, and she moved Sundar to the dry corner of the house. They carried days when she sold her gold bangles so her son could go to college. They carried silent prayers on railway platforms, train tickets bought with borrowed money, and meals skipped so he could have a textbook. That gesture so small, so respectful was the echo of everything she had ever done for him. Soon, breath caught. He turned slightly, looked down, and closed his eyes. No one saw a tear fall. No one, except the young girl sitting in the third row, who nudged her father and whispered, "Papa, the Google uncle is crying." And still, Lakshmi stood calm. "Mrs. Lakshmi Pichai," the announcer said again, "we are honored to have you with us." Lakshmi nodded politely, and when she took her seat next to her son, Sundar looked at her with quiet gratitude. He leaned close and whispered, "AMMA. ... You never needed to fold your hands," she whispered back. "That's exactly why I still do." The event continued. Leaders gave speeches. Videos were shown about Sundar's journey. Everyone clapped when old photos of him appeared on screen. Thin boy, black-rimmed glasses, standing outside a small school with a crooked signboard. But Sundar's mind stayed with that moment, that one gesture, those folded hands, and suddenly, memories returned. He remembered sitting on the kitchen floor, watching his mother kneel beside the coal stove, coughing as she blew into the fire. He had asked her once, "Oma, why don't we buy a gas stove?" And she had smiled and said, "Maybe next year." Next year never came, but he never heard her complain. He remembered walking with her to school, sometimes barefoot, because his slippers broke and there was no money for new ones. She would hold his hand tightly and say, "Walk like a lion, Kana, not like a beggar." He remembered the night she told him, "Don't be afraid to dream big, even if our world is small." Now the world was watching him, and all he wanted to do was hold her hand like he did when he was 5. Suddenly, Prime Minister Modi's voice echoed across the hall. "There are stories of India that are written in code, in apps, in satellites, and there are stories that are written in silence, in sacrifice, and in the smiles of mothers who never ask for credit. I salute Sundar Pichai, but today, I bow to the mother who made him." There was loud applause, but Sundar did not clap. His hands rested on his lap. His eyes were on his mother. He remembered what she said once, when he told her he got a job in America. "Don't forget the ground you're standing on, Kana," she had whispered, touching his feet. "Even when you touch the sky." The camera zoomed in on Sundar's face. He smiled, but it was not a smile for the crowd. It was a smile for one woman who still wore her old sari, still carried a steel tiffin box in her bag, and still greeted the most powerful man in India with folded hands, and deep inside, Sundar broke down again, not in shame, but in love, and in honor, outside the event hall. As they walked toward the car, Lakshmi said softly, "I saw you look away." Sundar chuckled. "I didn't want to cry in front of everyone." "You should have," she said. "Let them see. Even the strongest men cry when they remember who held them first." Sundar looked at her. Then, without a word, he opened the car door and let her in before he got in himself. The driver asked, "Sir, where to?" Lakshmi said, "Anywhere there's chai." Sundar smiled and nodded. "Chai, it is." But as the car pulled away, neither spoke. Sometimes silence says everything. The next morning, the sky was soft with light. Birds sang over rooftops. Vendors pushed their carts down sleepy streets. In the middle of all this calm, one small space in Tiruchirapalli came alive with quiet purpose. Stone by stone, hand by hand, people gathered at the old tea bench site. Sundar stood in a plain white shirt and jeans. No security, no team, no speeches. Only him, his mother, and a few workers he had personally called. The rusty signboard was taken down. A new wooden frame was carried in. The old bench, still rough and chipped, was cleaned but not changed. "Oma," Sundar said gently, "we're keeping every crack." Lakshmi nodded. "Everyone tells a story." They hung a new nameplate, Appa's Shelter. No logo, no brand, just those two words. By evening, the space looked different. A soft cloth canopy covered one side. A bookshelf stood in the corner, filled with old storybooks and newspapers. A small kettle and stove were placed next to it, not to sell tea, but to offer it freely. And near the bench, a board read, "Share your story. Listen to others. This place belongs to everyone." Lakshmi lit a small diya and placed it by the tree. "What do we do now?" she asked. "We wait," Sundar said, and they did. On the third day, as the sun started to set, a boy walked by, barefoot, carrying 2 plastic bags full of empty bottles. He stopped, sniffed the air, and saw the kettle. He looked unsure. Sundar walked toward him and smiled. "You want tea?" The boy hesitated, then nodded slowly. "Come, sit." The boy sat at the edge of the bench. Lakshmi poured the tea into a small steel cup and handed it to him. "Thank you, Auntie," the boy whispered. "What's your name?" Sundar asked. "Sanjay," he replied. "I collect bottles. My Uma is sick. Appa left long ago." Lakshmi placed her hand gently on the boy's back. Sundar sat beside him. "Want to tell us something about you?" The boy blinked. "Like what?" "Anything. Your day. Your dreams." "I don't have dreams," he said softly. "Dreams are for people with shoes," Lakshmi gasped. Sundar looked down. The boy's feet were bruised, rough, and dusty, without a word. Sundar removed his own shoes and placed them gently in front of the boy. "They're too big." Sanjay said shyly. "You'll grow into them," Sundar replied. Sanjay stared, then slowly placed his feet inside. Lakshmi wiped her eyes. "Sanjay," she said, "do you like school? I've never been. What if you could go?" The boy looked confused. "From tomorrow," Sundar said, "you'll go to school. We'll take care of the rest." "Why?" the boy asked. "You don't even know me?" "Because someone once helped me when I was small," Sundar said. "And now, it's my turn." Sanjay stared at him. "You're the Google uncle, aren't you?" Sundar laughed. "Sometimes." Sanjay finished his tea, then hugged Lakshmi tightly. "Thank you, Auntie," he whispered again as the boy left. Still wearing the oversized shoes, Lakshmi turned to Sundar. "He reminded me of you," she said. "Me too," he replied. "Same eyes, same hunger." A man passing by stopped. "What is this place?" he asked. "Appa's Shelter," Sundar said. "Can I sit?" "Always." And he did. Slowly, the bench filled. A vegetable seller came. Then, a school teacher. Then a taxi driver. Each one sat, shared something, listened to someone, and left lighter. Lakshmi served chai. Sundar listened quietly. By nightfall, 5 people had cried. 3 had offered help. 1 had found a job through a stranger. And Sundar knew something powerful had begun. Not through code, not through speeches, but through kindness. The next morning, news spread. Not through the internet, but by word of mouth. Did you hear? Sundar Pichai has opened a place where you don't have to buy anything. You just sit and feel human. A reporter came. Sir, she asked, why are you doing this? He replied, because someone once gave me tea without asking who I was. I never forgot that. 2 weeks later, Sundar sat at the bench again, alone. Lakshmi was resting at home. A man in his 40s approached. Clean clothes, strong posture, but eyes full of something deeper. Can I sit? He asked. Yes, Sundar said. They sat in silence for a while. Then the man said, I once bullied a boy in school. He was smart, quiet, always polite. I stole his lunch twice, mocked him for wearing torn shoes. Sundar looked at him. I never forgot that boy. He forgave me, but I never forgave myself. What was his name? Sundar. For a moment, the wind paused. The man looked at him carefully. You, he whispered. Sundar nodded. The man's face turned pale. I'm sorry. I truly am. Sundar placed his hand on the man's shoulder. You remembered. That's enough. I was cruel. And today, you chose to sit on the same bench. That takes courage. The man's eyes filled with tears. I thought you'd hate me. I did. For a while. But then I realized people are not just what they were. They are what they become. They sat quietly. No cameras. No applause. Just healing. That night, as the sun disappeared again, Lakshmi walked up to the bench. Oma, Sundar said, you once told me we don't need titles to change lives. Yes. Then you should know you just became the founder of the kindest place in the city. She smiled and looked at the stars. Your father would be proud. So would mine, Sundar said. She turned, surprised. You mean your son? He nodded. She laughed softly. Then I hope he grows to be like his grandfather. The car drove quietly through the wide streets of Delhi. Lakshmi looked out the window, her fingers resting lightly on the edge of her sari. Sundar sat beside her, still dressed sharp, still looking calm. His mind was not calm. He was replaying that moment. Her folded hands, the silence, the weight of everything unspoken. And now, this small ride to a chai shop, suggested not by him, not by the driver, but by her, his mother, who had just shared the stage with the Prime Minister of India, only wanted a cup of tea. But Sundar knew this wasn't about tea. It never was. 15 minutes later, the car slowed in front of a small roadside tea stall, not a fancy cafe, not a hotel lounge, just a tiny setup of wooden benches, an old kettle, and a man in his 50s pouring hot chai into steel glasses. Steam danced in the air as the sun slowly dipped behind the buildings. Here, Sundar asked gently. Lakshmi smiled. Here, they stepped out. The shop owner didn't recognize them at first, but when Sundar pulled his wallet out, the man froze, stared, and then whispered, Are you really Sundar Pichai? Sundar nodded softly. The man looked confused. But, why here, sir? Lakshmi spoke for him. Because we like real chai, not coffee with foreign names. The man laughed nervously, then rushed to clean the bench, bringing 2 clean glasses of steaming hot chai. As they sat, Sundar took a slow sip. It burned his tongue a little, just like it used to. For a moment, he felt like he was 15 again, sitting outside his college gate, waiting for the bus. AMMA, he said quietly. Do you remember that chai shop near our old house? Lakshmi smiled. her eyes warm. You mean the one where you used to sit for hours, pretending to study? He chuckled. I wasn't pretending, not always. You were waiting for your dreams to call you, she said. He looked at her. They did, and you answered for me. They sipped quietly for a while. Then, Sundar said something he hadn't said in years. There's something I never told you. She turned to him, curious. One day, he began, when I was 17. I walked into that chai shop with tears in my eyes. I had just gotten my entrance exam results. I didn't do as well as expected. Not bad, ... but not enough. And I thought I had let you down. Lakshmi said nothing. I sat down and ordered chai. I had just 10 rupees left in my pocket. I didn't even want to go home. I thought maybe if I sat long enough, the world would forget me. He looked away for a second, breathing in the smell of this new chai shop. It smelled the same. And then, he continued, a man sitting beside me said something strange. He said, boy, your eyes don't match your face. Your face says you failed, but your eyes look like they still believe in something. Lakshmi frowned. Who was he? I don't know. He left before I could ask. But those words stayed. They haunted me. He paused. I went home. You were in the kitchen. You didn't ask about my score. You just gave me food. And when I told you later, you didn't even flinch. She smiled. I already knew. How? Because you walked like someone who hadn't given up. He turned to her, stunned. How do you always know these things? She shrugged. Mothers? No. God gives us that much. They both laughed. But the laughter faded when Lakshmi put her glass down slowly. Her eyes stared ahead. Sundar, she said, do you remember that night when the electricity went out and you studied by the candlelight? Which night? He smiled. There were hundreds. The one when you had a fever, but still refused to sleep. Yes, that was the night your father said to me, he will go far. Sundar blinked, and I said to him, she continued, yes, but he will never forget where he started. They sat silently for a few more minutes. People walking by stared. Some took photos from a distance, but none dared interrupt. Sometimes, Lakshmi said softly, I wonder what you'd be like if we were rich. Sundar looked surprised. What do you mean? If we had money? She said. If you had computers at home, private schools, fast cars, would you still be you? He thought for a long moment. No, he said finally. I'd be someone else. Someone softer maybe, but not stronger. She nodded. That's why I never regretted the struggle, not once. He reached out and held her hand. Warm, steady, thin fingers that had washed his clothes, packed his food. Held him when he cried. I owe you everything, he whispered. No, she said gently. You owe me nothing. Just keep your feet on the ground. Then she added, with a smirk, and buy me a better chai next time. They both laughed again. Just then, a young boy came running up. He was about 10, wearing torn slippers and holding a small school bag. He stared at Sundar. Are you really Google, uncle? He asked. Wide-eyed Sundar bent down a little. Yes. What's your name? Amen, the boy said proudly. I want to be like you. Sundar smiled, looked at Lakshmi, then back at Amen. Then do one thing. What? Love your mother more than anything. The boy looked confused, then smiled and nodded as Amen ran back to his father, who sold fruits at the corner. Lakshmi said softly, You're becoming more like your father. How? He also believed that the biggest success is how you treat others. Sundar nodded slowly. Then he stood up and paid for the chai. The owner refused the money, but Sundar insisted. You gave us warmth, he said. That's worth more than chai. As they walked back to the car, Lakshmi whispered, You didn't break down today. No, he said, but I did remember the cracks. She smiled. Those cracks are where the light enters. When they reached the car, Sundar opened the door for her again. Before getting in, Lakshmi looked up at him. What's next? She asked. He paused, then said, "A place you once told me you always wanted to visit." "Where?" "Your old school." She smiled wide, and this time, she looked away not to hide her tears, but to let them fall without shame.